once we've accepted or we've acknowledged where we are at, can we then say, boom, okay, this is where I'm at. That's pretty fucked, but you know what? That's the way it is right now. And I'm going to focus my energy on here. And this is the version of me that I want to become. And this is who I'm stepping into. But until we start with that first piece of where are we now, then good luck.
Hey mate, I'm Coach Mitch and welcome to the Unbreakable Man podcast. It's my goal to help you achieve excellent results in the area of your health and physical fitness, your career or business, your relationships, and in your own personal passions. This is going to be your one-stop shop if you are the kind of man who wants to achieve his fullest potential in life. And the only way to do that is by becoming unbreakable. Cool. All right, guys, welcome to the Unbreakable Man podcast. Today, I'm sitting here with my good friend, Scott Wallace. How are you, Scotty?
So good, brother.
Great
so
to be in
good.
the studio, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Awesome. And so Scotty is a professional breathwork facilitator, mindset coach, speaker. You got a lot going on at the moment. Rap artist as well.
Yes.
So yeah, you know, we've got a lot to talk about, man. And I want to definitely dive into your journey of what's allowed you to be where you are right now and who you are right now. Because the Unbreakable Man podcast is all about helping guys create the life that they are really passionate about and that they really love, you know, and you're one such man who's living that life right now, I think, you know. So it's about what's the formula, you know, and the formula is going to be different for everyone, but I think there are some patterns that sort of connect us all in the way that, in the steps that we should be aiming to follow to help us figure out what is it that we really want to do, what matters the most to us, and how we're going to go about achieving that. So could you, before we do anything else, because I'm sure there's people who are listening to this right now who've heard about breath work but don't really know much about it, or like what are the benefits of it. So in your own opinion, man, what is breath work, and why do you think it's so important?
Yeah. Beautiful, man. So before we talk, let's stop.
Here we go. This is so Wallace, man.
If you are driving, I don't encourage you to do this. But if you're safe in your seat, just taking a moment to close down your eyes. To actually just stop. To stop moving, to relax, to notice your breath right here in this moment right now. And just noticing, is your breath coming in and out of your mouth? Is your breath coming in and out of your nose? There's no need for judgment. We're just becoming the observer and noticing what is. So now taking a nice deep breath in through your nose and letting it out with a sigh or a sound. Let's do 4 more, guys. Fully in. 3 more breaths. One more breath, fully in through the nose. And letting it all go. And just feeling that blood coursing through your veins, feeling your feet on the earth or wherever you're sitting, and just slowing down. And when you're ready, you can just blink open your eyes. Having a little look around the space you're in. Landing right here, right now, in the body, in this moment. Starting to open up our heart, starting to open up our mind, to be present with what's present. So, great to see you, brother.
It's good to have you, Scotty.
Big love. So, breath work. Breath work. Imagine breathwork to be a umbrella term that really describes a whole number of different techniques and practices and ways of using your breath to create different effects physiologically with our brainwaves, with our emotions, with our energy. And there's so many different techniques out there. And a lot of people have heard of the Wim Hof breathing method. A lot of people have heard of pranayama and the yogic breathing. And the reality is they are just a couple of types of breathwork techniques. at the core of breathwork practices and techniques, it's all about becoming conscious of your breath and breathing consciously, using our breath intentionally. So we take over 20,000 breaths a day. 20,000 breaths, bro. Wild. Now, a lot of these breaths we're not consciously aware of because it's part of our body called our autonomic nervous system that's keeping our breathing going, that's keeping our digestion going, that is keeping our blood pressure regulated, etc. So it's like that autopilot part of us, that robotic part of our physiology that keeps us surviving. Now, just because something keeps us surviving doesn't mean that we're thriving, doesn't mean that we're actually harnessing our breath to its full capacity to optimize our performance, to optimize our energy levels, to really get the most out of this normal part of our body, right? So breath work there's so many different techniques, and there's a small handful of techniques that I share with my clients that I use on a daily basis that revolve around combination of activating breathwork techniques and restorative breathwork techniques, where essentially on one side of the spectrum, we're lifting up our energy, we're stimulating parts of our sympathetic nervous system, high energy, focus, clarity, and then we've also got restorative techniques, which are slower, grounding, allows us to just slow down, to decompress a fair bit. And the work that I do, what I share with people, is just a combination of different daily practices and techniques, and then also the bigger breathwork journeys, which I love to explore more about today. So breath is really we can do days without food. My last fast was like a 7-day water and juice fast, right? We don't need to be eating every single day. But if we look at our need for oxygen, bro, we need fucking oxygen. That's the thing that's going to be so crucial in the short term to our survival. If our brain doesn't have oxygen for a few minutes, then we start becoming brain dead. We start losing parts of these parts of our brain. So it's super crucial, man. So really, breath is so powerful for coming into the present moment. We can use the breath to regulate our nervous system. We can use our breath to elevate our energy, to slow down, and really to just feel what it's like to be alive. Because so many people, brother, are, in our lives navigating things, and they're just on that do, the go. They're not stopping, they're not slowing down. And I see it with humans in general and a lot of men. There's an unwillingness to slow down, an unwillingness to be present with what's present on the inside, an unwillingness to actually stop and say, hey, what the fuck's going on in my head? What are my thoughts? What am I feeling in my body? What do I need? What feels good? What doesn't feel good in my life? And it's natural that people don't want to go there because, well, there could be discomfort, there could be uncomfortability. And what I find with breath is just so powerful to come into the present, to tune in and access altered states of consciousness. So that's a bit of framing around that. And I've been using breath work for my own healing and transformation over the years, and to support my clients, my community, my family, my friends, to really go deep, tap into their own medicine, access that wisdom from within, all through breath.
Yeah. There was something that I read in one of your posts, and I commented on it, you might remember, is you called it inner medicine, like it's the internal medicine. Like, we have these ailments, stress, depression, anxiety, even physical pain in the body and inflammation and whatnot. And whilst obviously, there's prescription drugs out there, and there's all these things that we can take and we fill our bodies full of. I think we'll dive into more of how this is possible, but I think we all know that our body's designed to heal itself, and a lot of what we need in order to change what we want to change in our life, we already have in us, whether it's, allowing our body time to heal, or even just the way that we're thinking that's creating some of these pains that we're experiencing. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to get you on today, Scott, is because I think that what you do and what you have to offer would make a massive difference for a lot of men out there. However, I think that a lot of men have either never been exposed to this, or this is just right now for a lot of men, some of the things that you're mentioning before, like even the language that you use is outside of what a lot of men would typically understand, right? Yeah. So we'll definitely dive into that because I think there's real value in it. And for complete transparency, I've done one of Scott's breathwork journeys, and for me it was like, well, I've seen the results that other people have had. I've not had a personal experience myself, but how can I have an opinion on something either way if I've not had a personal experience of it? And if other people are getting good results, then maybe there's something to it. So my whole thing was like, I don't really know what I'm going to get out of this. Like, I wasn't sure what I was going to experience, but it was like, if I think there's value in this for the men that I work with and the men that are listening to this, then it's up to me to go first and have that understanding, just to start off with, the hippies know something we don't, guys. 100%. 100%. I did the breathwork journey, and I see why there's a lot of that, the language that you might use, talking about, like the inner self, consciousness, the universe, that kind of thing, because it is hard to put into words for me personally with the kind of language I would typically use. And the best way I could describe it as I was going through this process with you was, I feel like universe and soul and spirit, to me, all are kind of words that could go in place of your subconscious mind, the part of your brain that's always there, that is pulling a lot of the strings in our lives. Perhaps it's the thing that is, maybe it's our consciousness, in the sense that when you're doing something wrong, like, you know what I mean? Like, you have that gut feeling. We call it a gut feeling because we feel it in our gut, but it's our minds kind of giving us a physiological feeling of us making a bad decision for us. But we often don't listen to that gut feeling because what it's telling us to do is scary or uncomfortable, right? Like, get out your comfort zone, or, go and talk to that girl you're attracted to, or, go into the gym even though you don't feel like you belong in there right now because there's something in there for you, and there's that consciousness that knows what we really want and knows what we really need to do, and it's kind of nudging us in that direction. But whether our conscious mind, whether we consciously choose to listen to it or not, is a different story, right? Yeah. And I think that every man listening to this right now, like, you might be a little bit confused by some of the language we use so far, but I think you know what your intuition is telling you in a lot of ways. When you're making a bad call. When you should be having a conversation with your partner, your boss, your friend, your colleague about something that is bothering you within that relationship, and you're not because you're afraid, But if you had that conversation and you solved that problem, that your life would be way better. So what I found when I was doing my breathwork journey with you is that I got to really tap into and just think through that part of my mind that sees everything I do constantly, 24/7, 365, but doesn't actually control my actions. Yeah. Right? And it was the clearest I've ever thought, I would say, that I can recall. And for me, I think I'm very fortunate in that I had that experience in a time of my life where everything, well, I mean, look, I'd be fortunate if I was having that experience when things weren't going well. But what I found was the clarity that I got from that, all it did was just made me not question what I was currently doing. Where before that, we always have our doubts about, is this the right move for me? Is this the right person for me? Is this the right job for me? Yeah, and there might always be that little shred of what if something else. And my experience doing the breathwork journey with you just got rid of that feeling, which is what allowed me to really just go, think about going all in to the things that I was already doing. It made me go, I'm not even going to consider the fact that there's something out there that I should be doing differently, because I know that what I'm doing right now is exactly what I should be doing. And I think having that kind of clarity makes the decisions that you have to make and the actions that you got to take so much easier, because you're not second guessing yourself. So that's what I really got from that experience with you. And you know, I've had conversations with people about it. It's tough to explain and put it to words, but I highly encourage everyone that's spoken about it, yeah, give this a shot, you know? So it was awesome, man.
You touched on so many juicy threads.
Yeah.
Like, I want to weave in with so much of it.
What do you have to say about
like, yeah, I don't know. We started the podcast, you know, being very specific in terms of one part of the work I do, one part of my experience, and one part of the medicine and the guidance that I offer people in their life. And I remember in one of the coaching containers we were in a few months ago, and I was sharing something in that group, and you're like, what the fuck does that even mean, bro? And it's such a great point, because it allows us, it encourages us to communicate in a way that is understandable, that people can understand in simpler terms, right? No matter what industry we're in, no matter what our area of expertise in, we all have our lingo, we all have our jargon. But if we want to connect with people en masse, we need to build relatability. We need to be able to communicate in a way that is clear, that makes sense for people based on their model of the world, right? And so it was really great that you brought that to my attention at the time. And I know touched upon those threads of spirituality in terms of this higher self, this higher power, this collective consciousness, and the links between what's happening in our bodies, what's happening in our experience, what's happening in our gut, in our mind, and how do we best tune into what's happening to make decisions in life? How do we best navigate this journey of life through what is present for us? As you said, accessing that inner medicine, tapping into what is, and allowing our internal compass to steer our decisions, allowing our internal feelings and intuition to guide our decisions. And that is such an important level of empowerment, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know what the fuck they want to do, that are not sure what they want. They're not sure if something feels good or doesn't feel good in their reality. They don't have a sense of direction, and they are stuck in the mind, which is just going through the same thoughts. And the majority of these thoughts can be quite negative, can be limiting. And it's important to understand that all of these thoughts are so common for humans to have. And the mind, when there's the negative self-talk, the limiting beliefs, the doubt, you can't do this, you're not good enough, who the fuck do you think you are, da 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 da. Everyone's had them at some point in their life, but your ability to become the observer and notice those thoughts, to create some space between those thoughts and your higher self as the spiritual being, as the greater awareness on all of this. This is when we're starting to step into the space of spirituality, where we become the observer of our experience. We start to notice things. Like there's an energy, there's a being, there's a presence that is aware of all. That we get so stuck in our body, in our minds here right now, but we know there's so much more than just this physical reality. And as you said about the intuition, these deeper feelings that we have, that gut feeling, you know, I for a long time didn't trust that gut feeling because of my education. You know, coming through a science degree, coming through a law degree, as we were chatting about before, was a very particular way to look at the world and a particular set of frameworks and models. And just know, whatever you've studied, whatever you've learned, whatever faith you've been delving into, whatever you're listening to, that is all influencing the way that you see the world, influencing the way you see yourself, and creates a model of the world that is going to influence your beliefs, your decisions, and how you show up. So the more that we can become aware of where we are at, the energy we're around, the conversations we're having, are they supporting us? Are we feeling they're expansive? Are they feeling great? Are we learning things, or are we feeling depleted and run down? And do we feel shitty when we're spending time with certain people? To allow that to be feedback and a bit of data, a bit of insight into what's happening in our life. So I truly believe, and I did a video about this the other day, is if people can start by acknowledging what's happening in their world, acknowledging those thoughts, creating some space between their thoughts to notice that you are the observer of your thoughts. You are not the thoughts themselves. You are that being experiencing these different sensations and feelings. You're not the feelings themselves. Then we can start creating some space, and in that space, we can have that higher perspective on life. And that for me is where that level of consciousness comes in, our higher self, our spiritual essence, and the importance to tune into what's happening in our bodies, observing our thoughts and feeling what's going on is the first step that we can take to come into greater alignment, to allow this to be a bit of feedback, to redirect, change our life and create some change.
Yeah. Perspective's the right word too. It really is. And, again, if you're listening to this right now and, Scotty's spiritual coaching is still confusing you a little bit, then a simple way that you might want to think about it is all you're doing is changing your perspective. And I think one physical way that you could do that for yourself is write down the things that you're thinking about or that are going through your mind. And then they're on a page separate from you and you're looking at them from a different perspective instead of them running around in your head constantly. And you get the opportunity to observe the actual thought. It's written there in front of you. And you're so right, man. Creating that space between yourself and what's going on is absolutely crucial if you want to solve the problem, because everyone's in the problem right now. But if we can disconnect from the problem, not to avoid it, but just to see it for what it really is, and how much it isn't as big of a deal as perhaps you create in your own mind, I think is really crucial as well.
Got another example to share with people, just in terms of the practicalities around how we tune into our bodies, how we work with our intuition, how we can allow everything that happens in our life to just be a bit of feedback, a bit of data to help you explore certain parts of your life, to help you create more of what you want, to help you create less of what you don't want in your life, and come into feeling fulfilled and in a greater state of alignment. So let me offer two examples. And this is, for me, how I can bring the higher perspective, a spiritual perspective, into everyday life and things that are, real for people. So say, for example, you're having a conversation with someone and they say something, all of a sudden you feel like weird. You feel like, I feel uncomfortable after something they said, and maybe you're starting to doubt yourself, or you're feeling really unworthy, or you feel like someone is rejecting you, or whatever it is. And you feel it in your body. And for me, when I get triggered by something or someone, it's blatant as fuck. Like my whole physiology shifts, my face goes into like this
For sure.
weird state, and I feel it in my body. So there's something that's been said, something that's happened in the world, and you've had a response to it. You've had a reaction to that stimulus, right? So a lot of people will try to deny that and just try to maybe move past it. Now, the other approach is to actually lean into that, is to go, you know what, what's present for me? Mitch has said something, I'm now feeling rejected because he didn't want to go, he wanted to go down to the pub with me or whatever it was, I'm feeling a sense of rejection, right? Now, this is not that you are making me feel a certain way. I'm fucking making myself feel a certain way. You're just being you, doing your thing, and the response is within my side, based off my experience, based off how I'm perceiving what's being said. And at the end of the day, you can be having the best of intentions, might not have meant anything in the way that I'm perceiving it, but I'm still feeling that, okay? So we're starting to take radical self-responsibility. And when we have these experiences in life, we feel that physiological shift. We may feel the anger or the resentment or the frustration or the sadness. And the more that we can notice those shifts, we can go, something's happening. And even if this is the question that people ask, is something's happening, what's that about? And to take the time to look at the thoughts, to feel into the body and say, okay, well, yeah, I'm feeling triggered because Mitch has shared something, and for me, I'm now feeling rejected, and that's got nothing to do with you. This is on my side. So why am I feeling that? Oh, well, because I'm actually really feeling a bit lonely and isolated in life. And now the fact that Mitch doesn't want to do something with me is emphasizing that feeling that's already within me. And now I'm making that mean that I'm rejecting a part of that. So it's like to just allow all these experiences to just be a bit of feedback, to get curious about what's happening. That way we step into our power, we own our shit, we own what's going on, and to know that the universe, right, the whole matrix has given you an opportunity in that moment to come to deeper understanding of yourself, to highlight different parts of you that maybe are unhealed, that may be unintegrated, maybe parts of you that you can do some more work on, just by another human being themselves, following what feels good for them, and that's actually affected you. It's affected me, right? So this is starting to look at things from the higher perspective, where it's like, that could be the perfect opportunity for growth and healing and understanding. And instead of making things right or wrong, we can just work with what is.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Oh man, that makes so much sense. And I really love that, because I think that, you know, to me, what being unbreakable means is taking those challenges and turning them into opportunities. Otherwise they break you, right? So if you can see that as a growth opportunity for yourself, then you couldn't possibly look at it in a more positive, more productive way, you know? And I think it gets me, whenever I have an experience like that, it gets me excited, because then I think, well, what if I was a person who, in this particular situation, that feeling never came up for? What if I was the kind of person who that was just not even a possibility for me, because I'd made peace with that part of myself. I'd accepted, let's say, where I am in my life right now. You know, if you're a man right now, and in fact, there's a great conversation that we had at Hour of Power on Wednesday morning, and one of the guys opened up and he shared how he punched his stepson on the arm because his stepson had told his other stepson to punch his biological son, right? So he's got two stepsons and his biological kid, and one of his stepsons, the older one, tried to convince the younger one to punch his actual kid, right? And he told us that all of those, like, he had an instant angry reaction. That was the thing that came up for him straight away. And so he punched his stepson on the arm to say, look, this is how it feels. This is what you're going to do to Max, but this is what you're going to do to him. I want you to know how this feels so that you know that it doesn't feel good, you know? And for him, he spoke about what instantly came up for him was it reminded him of his brothers abusing him when he was a kid, you know? And that's horrible. Like, that really sucks. And it's not his fault that he had to go through that. But one thing I heard the other day that I think is really true is, while something might not be your fault, that doesn't mean it's not your problem. That doesn't mean it's not your responsibility to fix it, because nobody else can, you know? So talking about creating that awareness around those things in your life, because if my friend didn't take the second to go, well, why did I do that? You know, like, was that really the best response for me to create? And what made me instantly react that way? What made the anger come up? You know, if you never ask that question, then you continue to respond with anger without knowing where it's coming from. And it's the origin of it that's the real problem, not the anger itself.
Exactly.
Right?
Such a great example.
Right? So, and I believe another reason why you're here today, man, is because I think what you have to offer is a solution for those inner feelings that we allow to run rampant because we don't take the time to become aware of them and then start to address them.
Totally, brother. And thank you for sharing that example. And it's the perfect example of something happening, you know, something external to that person, his stepson saying this, and then him getting into reactive energy, and then actually bringing more pain into the world and bringing more, it's not bringing love into the world. It's bringing more pain, more fear. It's bringing more of, like, you know, we can teach and educate without having to have the catalyst of the negativity and the bad thing that we want to avoid. Because the interesting thing is that action is then actually bringing more into the world of what he doesn't want to see, and he's actually trying to not bring into the world.
Absolutely.
But unconsciously, it's that reaction, boom, and then we see, okay, well, that has brought him back to his childhood when he was younger, or whenever that was. And that's where the seed has been planted. It's that moment, it's those years or whatever it was that has built up into the body-mind system, so into the body, where he feels that that pain, that discomfort, that uncomfortability, and it's triggered that within him, and then he's reacted, as opposed to stopping and responding when we feel those sensations to go, ooh, man, I'm feeling frustrated right now, I'm feeling angry, and how am I going to show up? Is this going to be productive? Is this going to be constructive? Or is this going to be destructive or non-productive? And either way, you know, we don't need to be always so fucking hard on ourselves. As long as we own our shit, as long as we take responsibility and have this willingness to lean in, this willingness to explore what's beneath the surface. And on the weekend, I was up at Conscious Life Festival in Sunshine Coast. I had a stall there, connected with so many epic people, facilitated a big breathwork journey, short one, but really potent. And a lot of people, it was their first time experiencing breathwork, and there was so many emotions, body, like energy coming through the body, realizations, like, wow, this is the fucking most life-changing workshop I've ever been to. I hear it every single week. Like, I know the power of breathwork and the power of going within. And I was chatting to someone at my stall about this thread that you were speaking to about before, which is when we look at our responses, when we look at our reactions, when we look at the thoughts that are coming through, really what's happening in our world, be it positive or negative. And I've started to, not polarization is good, it has a place, but all the positive and negative things, it's like that's just the tip of the iceberg. And where I like to operate, and where the true deep inner healing and transformation can be found, is what's beneath the tip of the iceberg. What's that whole mass underneath? And that's the unconscious part. That's where we've got our childhood traumas. This is where we've got our the relationships we've had, our needs that were met or not being met, how we grew up, the challenges we've experienced throughout our childhood, throughout our adulthood, and just life's experiences all contribute to that beneath the iceberg stuff. And a lot of the time we focus, as you said, on what's there. We're in the problem. We're stuck in that experience, and we forget that it's just a fucking experience. It's just a feeling. It's just an emotion, and it's temporary. All of it's temporary. And on the live that I did before I got here, I was speaking to this thread of one day we're not going to wake up and we're not going to feel anymore. One day we're not going to feel anymore. So while we are alive and while we are awake and in this body, in this lifetime, and we're feeling, be fucking grateful that we are feeling. And to harness those feelings to be the puzzle piece to what's happening, to where can we explore more, where can we bring some more healing and some work to, and to just allow what is to be. Because this is one way that your body, your intuition is speaking to you. It's saying, hey, you feel uncomfortable having this conversation with someone? Yeah, because you feel like you're not honoring your boundaries, and you're saying yes and yes, yes, yes over and over, and you're not honoring yourself. This is why you're feeling uncomfortable every time you say yes to that person, because you're not honoring yourself. And how do we know that? Well, we feel it in the body and we feel uncomfortable. So to be curious about that. That is the single most powerful pathway to uncovering what lies beneath the tip of the iceberg. Because we see the tops, we see the tip, but we've got to operate on a deeper level to really get to the root cause, as you said. And that level of processing, that level of what's the root cause, the main problem beneath the surface, is where I love to operate. And that's where breath work as a modality and as a practice allows us to access the unconscious mind. Breath work allows us to slow down our brain waves, to come out of the highly thinking, rational, anxious, stressed, what the fuckness of the mind, because we all got it, and to come down to access our unconscious mind, to come into what lies beneath the surface. And one of the interesting things with breath work is you slow down your brain waves, come to an alpha and theta brainwave state out of the high beta. This creates more coherence with our hearts and our brain. So we're starting to have more flow and more connectivity with our truth, with our hearts, with that state of love, with that state of presence in our conscious mind, bridging that gap, because a lot of people are not living from a place of love, are not living from a place of feeling connected to their truth. And you and I both are passionate about supporting, yes, men, but human beings in general as well, to live from this place of their truth, to step into their power. And we've got to be doing the work to be able to elevate to these higher states. The unconscious mind has a lot of the keys, a lot of the answers.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One thing I really admire about you, Scott, is that I can tell that you are exactly who you feel like you are in the moment. You know, I never feel like you're ever trying to produce a certain perception of yourself. I really just feel like you are living exactly who you feel like you are in that moment. And that's the reason why, again, I wanted you on here today to share what you have to share, because one thing you just mentioned there is, like, you know, those guys who are constantly saying yes to people, and inside they know that I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do that. You know, let's say you're in a relationship and you're constantly placating to your partner, even though you feel like every step you take is a step away from who you actually feel like you are. Right. And there's so many dudes that I think are listening to this right now who either are having that experience or something like it, you know, and I look at you and I go, man, I wish you had what Scott had, you know. And even myself, I know that there's more I've got to figure out about myself to be able to just fully think, say, feel, and act as I am on the inside, 24/7. And because that's what takes away the guesswork. Is this the right thing for me? What will people think if I say this or if I do this? You know, and I myself, I think, I don't think I've put it into words as well as I am right now, and as well as you do. But I think unknowingly I've noticed that and been on that journey for a little while. Because I noticed those uncomfortable feelings we spoke about. Yeah. You know, why am I uncomfortable when I speak to this attractive girl? Let's say, you know, I don't want to feel that way. That sucks, because then I just can't be myself. You know, instead I'm thinking, what does she want me to say? Instead of just saying exactly what I feel like. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because again, I'm trying to produce a certain result instead of just being who I feel like I really am. And then things work out fantastic. And I think that oftentimes, you know, one of the things that I think draws me to you and other people to you is that you are that way. Yeah. You know, and that's your superpower, man. And I think that if we could all learn to be like that, not only would we actually be better for the people around us, but we would personally feel more happy within ourselves, because we are just being ourselves, you know, and consistently working on upgrading who ourselves are too. So let's say there's a guy watching this right now, and I'm sure there is, who's listened to everything that you said, and he feels like he's not being himself in his life, and things aren't working out because of that. And now he knows that, okay, I do need to get a different perspective on what's going on. And I do need to step back and become more aware of some of these feelings in my life and why they're happening. Who understands what we're talking about, sees the value of it in his life, but is afraid to take that first step and doesn't know what's coming next.
Yeah. Great.
What would you say to him?
You have everything you need within you already to take that next step. That we have within us the answers to a lot of the questions that we seek. And it's about taking that time to observe our thoughts, to feel what's present in our bodies, to get curious, and to really lean into the uncomfortability. You know, one of the frameworks that I put together for my coaching, it's called the AAA framework, right? The AAA framework is all about acknowledging, accepting, and allowing. Okay, acknowledging, accepting, and allowing. Now, the first thing, if we wanted to create change in our lives, we need to first figure out where the fuck we are. What's happening? What's real for us? Where are we? To do an audit, to do a check-in and go, okay, this is where life is. And I run my clients through this often. It's a daily, weekly thing. Where are we at emotionally? You know, how's finances? How's, the mindset going? How's your daily practices? How's relationships? And to see where we're at. And then we can then set targets for where we want to be. But firstly, we've got to accept where we are at. And for a lot of people, that first piece of just accepting and acknowledging that there's feelings there, that there's fear, that there's doubt, is where that's where it starts. Acknowledging and accepting, hey, I feel this way, I feel fucked, I feel like I don't have clarity, And in that we're starting to acknowledge what's real for us, acknowledging the fullness of us, as opposed to rejecting or blocking out certain parts of us and then putting things into the shadow and then not wanting to go there. It's just really acknowledging, accepting what is, allowing what is to be unfolding without trying to manipulate, without trying to change things, and bringing our power back in. So in those instances where, and I just want to say I appreciate your perceptions and reflections on who you think I am, right, in terms of how I show up. And whilst I endeavor daily to do my best to show up in an authentic, real way, the unconscious mind is always there, always influencing things. And there's days, and even today, like I was going to post a video, and when I post it, people are going to think, yeah, amazing, like it's all done in one take and it's great. Yeah, they didn't fucking see the 15 before then because I was like, oh no, it went too long. And all these other little pieces that my perfectionist part, and that part of me that wants everything to be perfect, is influencing and controlling. Yes, there's times I just do a video and I get it up, sweet. Other times I faff around because that part of me doesn't feel good enough. That part of me doesn't feel like, oh, I want to articulate it differently, and all these thoughts. So to know that they're going to be there and to not block them, to not reject them, to not try to deny that part of us that exists, but to rather say, hey, homie, I see this part of me that goes, you don't want to share this video because you don't think it's good enough, and you don't want to get hurt, and you don't want to get embarrassed and ridiculed by people. And that part of us is there to protect us. It's part of our ego. It doesn't want us to be hurt. But are you going to allow that part of you to dictate your life? It's your choice. You can or not, but enjoy the consequences either way. Your choice. So the more that we can understand these parts of us, love on all these parts of us, and not make things right or wrong, but rather look at it from a perspective of, does this feel like it's in alignment with my growth and my well-being and my evolution, or does it not? And in the body, that can often feel like, if something, and I'm going to bring this a layer deeper, if something feels in the body like we're feeling like pulled forward towards it, we're feeling open, we're feeling expansive, we're wanting to lean into a conversation, we're opening up when there's a woman there, then that's like a forward momentum. It's like it's open, we're receptive, it feels good. The other side of that is there may be moments where we're feeling contracted, we're feeling stuck, we're feeling small, we're not wanting to engage in that person, we're feeling the doubt, and that feels differently in the body, and it sounds differently in the mind. So even just looking at things from a place of, is this coming from a place of love right now, or is this coming from a place of fear? And most of the time people will know if it's coming from a place of love, a decision, a choice, whatever, or is it coming from a place of fear? So acknowledging and accepting what is the first powerful step to creating change, because only once we've accepted and we've acknowledged where we are at, can we then say, boom, okay, this is where I'm at. That's pretty fucked, but you know what? That's the way it is right now, and I'm going to focus my energy on here, and this is the version of me that I want to become, and this is who I'm stepping into. But until we start with that first piece of where are we now, then good luck.
Totally. 100%, man. That is why it's so important to become aware. It is life-changing, because I know when I feel that self-doubt, or whether I'm trying to do something and despite my best efforts, it's not working the way I want it to. And then you start to think, oh man, am I good enough to do this? If you don't have the conversation with yourself, then you are going to head down that I'm not good enough path. Yeah. And I'm so happy that you just mentioned what you mentioned, because I don't want anyone watching this or listening to this to think that myself or anyone else I bring onto this podcast doesn't also have these problems. I don't want anyone to put
We all fucking do.
I don't want anyone,
Like everyone.
yeah, I don't want anyone to put any one of us on any kind of pedestal whatsoever, because all we are, at best, is a dude who's a little further down the same path.
In certain areas.
Exactly. In certain areas, exactly right. And the only difference between yourself and myself, or myself and anyone watching this, or yourself and anyone watching this, is that you have a process for dealing with that challenge, right? And you've practiced that process enough times so that it's really effective to help you continue to move forwards. By acknowledging what's happening, by accepting the fact that it's happening and it is the way it is, allowing it to happen, and then making a positive, productive choice after that. So I love the fact that you mentioned that, because I think it's so true. And the whole point of becoming unbreakable is, it's not about you were born a certain way with certain skills and that's the reason why you're successful or not. It's that you've done the work, you've taken the steps, and you've invested in yourself enough to become the kind of person you need to be to create what you're looking for. It's not a natural God-given thing. It's just anyone can do it if they're willing to take on that path. And for the guys listening to this, I really hope that the stuff that Scott's already spoken about deeply, and really, like, I love what you shared today, man, and certainly on the level you shared it as well, because there's a lot to take away. And even if you only took away one thing, even if just the most superficial version of the conversation we've had today is the bit that you are kind of connecting with, or is most relevant to you in your life right now, that you can understand, and you're taking that away, then that's absolutely fantastic. That's that first step, right? And I do think as well, when we going back to my last question about that guy wanting to take this first step but being afraid of step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or not knowing what they look like, I think sometimes, if we're really honest with ourselves, lads, we know what some of those steps are, and we're scared shitless of them. You know what I mean? We really do know. We know that maybe this person that I'm with is not the one for me, but allowing myself to become aware of that, like internally, not just kind of have a few anecdotal things in my external life, but really in my heart, knowing that if I stay with this person, I'm actually going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And if you've already gotten married to that person, or you've had kids with them, or maybe you just moved in with them, you bought a house with them, like having the courage to allow even your mind to go down that path, let alone take any action, but just because you know that once you internalize that feeling, you can't get rid of it. Like, it's going to be there. It's that conscious part, unconscious part of your mind, that gut feeling, that awareness, that the universe telling you this is not right for you, man. And I think that and that's just one example. It could be the job you work in, the career path you've chosen. I've spent 5 years or 7 years at uni, and I don't want to be a lawyer, let's say, whatever it is. In your heart, like, it's starting to become more clear, but I think we avoid it because the truth is painful. However, on the opposite side of that truth, on the opposite side of that truth is you getting to be who you really are, And I think that in this moment, going through the pain right now, I think most people choose to avoid that and kick that can down the road. But I don't think anyone that's ever done that ever looks back and goes, that was the right choice.
Yes, I'm glad I suppressed that. I'm glad I didn't work on that part of me.
They always go, I just wasted 20 years of my life in a job that I don't like, or with a person that I wasn't meant to be with, and that is something I come back to a lot, because I've spoken to so many blokes who have made those commitments early on in life without, and I feel bad for them because these conversations weren't as prevalent 20, 30, 40 years ago, which sucks. Because I think that if they'd had the same, I mean, always in hindsight, we look back and go, if I know what I know now, I would have done something differently. But that is such a common thing. And that's really what I want to help guys overcome. Again, become unbreakable so that you can get through those things and get to the other side of that in your life. So you can really be the person you want to be.
Man, so good. And so much gold in it, man. And that level of empowerment and that vision, that's also something that I'm so passionate about. And, to become that unbreakable man, we've got to acknowledge the parts of us that are breakable, that we don't want to look at, parts of us that, are our wounds, our pain, our challenges, and also to really step into acknowledging and owning all of that. And because I've lived a life at times where, and the relationship one is a great example where it's not speaking my truth. I was letting my boundaries to be crossed. I was being, weak in terms of my self-respect and my self-worth by I was tolerating someone to treat me a certain way or not speaking into something when I wanted to because of the fear, because of the doubt, and oh shit, it's going to disrupt things. And I now know, like, a lot of the people that I work with come to me because they want to cultivate that inner confidence to be who the fuck they are, to take up space in the world, to be seen, to be in their power, to be like, this is me and this is what I'm here to do. And to know that no one's perfect in that, but our ability to keep leaning in and showing up, accepting all parts of us is so important for this work. And the more that we can acknowledge all these different parts of our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our habits, then we can start really just loving on all the parts of us and bringing some more kindness and compassion to us so we can move forward in an empowered way. And that piece on communicating is so important because we all have these instances where we want to say something, but we then filter ourselves. We want to say, say, you invite me out to dinner and, my response is, look, I'll let you know how I go. I'll check in with you later. Does that sound like I'm fucking keen? It's like, well, part of me deep down, maybe I'm feeling like I actually don't really want to go, but I don't want for you to feel rejected. I do value your friendship and I don't feel like going out that night.
But I know that you don't want to go just by that response. Instead, I would have preferred for you to just say,
exactly as it is, bro. Thank you for the invite, bro. I appreciate your friendship. I actually don't feel like going out for dinner that night. Can we do it another time? Cool. Yeah. Yes. No. Cool, bro. Sweet. And we've eased that energetical tension. Because this is what it is. That energetical tension that we feel in our body, in our emotions, and our gut feeling is saying it's strong. And I truly believe that our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions is just one way that our higher self is just communicating to us. It's saying, hey, you're focusing on something shitty and negative, well, here, you're going to feel fucked for the whole day.
Yeah.
Oh, you're focusing on how good life is and you're focusing on how grateful you are. Sweet. I'm going to give you some good vibes. I'm going to really load you up on that because where focus goes, energy flows. Where focus goes, energy flows. So if you were to just look at all of your experiences, just one bit of communication to say, hey, what does this mean? What's it about? To be curious about that. Man, we can live an empowered life because we're stepping into the fullness of who we are. We're stepping into our truth. And one of the things that I regularly share with people is speak your truth, listen to your heart. Listen to your heart, speak your truth. What is real for you? And show up in the world in a way that you're being honest with yourself and to trust that. I know for a lot of people, we didn't feel safe taking up space in the world. We didn't feel safe to express what we wanted. We didn't feel safe asking for something in a relationship because there's fear. We had a bad experience. Well, we're going to allow those cycles to continue, or we're actually going to create a new story. And that willingness to lean in and to become comfortable in the uncomfortable and to allow that uncomfortability to be a fucking ally and to work with it is how we build character, is how we build resilience, because there is no one in their life is going to live without any fear, without any discomfort, or without anything negative or bad happening. That's life. Accept it. How the fuck you deal with that is where your power lies. And this is where we can start coming back into our sovereignty, back into our truth, and choosing how we're going to show up in the world. And are we going to react from a place of unconsciousness, fear, negativity, or are we going to respond to life's challenges and what's happening from a place of love, from a place of clarity, from a place of truth? And to know that irrespective of what I've come to realize, Mitch, is the feeling of not speaking my truth, the feeling of not expressing what's real for me is more uncomfortable than the potential response that I'm going to get from someone. The more uncomfortable than a potential rejection from a woman who's like, no, I'm not interested. Because I feel that energy. Am I going to sit with that, or am I going to express that? And before I came here today, I was working with my producer. So it was my first session as I've written this rap, and I'm about to release this rap this year. And I'm fucking so amped, dude. I'm so pumped to get this out to the world. And I was telling my producer, Ayla, that me stepping into this artistry, stepping into writing a rap for the first time and getting this release, I've never released music or anything. It's like the part of me, in order to stay in integrity and to honor my truth, I needed to lean into that. I don't need to understand the 4 reasons why. I don't need to know all the 10 steps, as you said earlier. It's just about taking that one step. What's that one next step? And to know that everybody has within them everything they need to take that one next step. And that's where we start, brother. The rest unfolds, and just buckle up for the ride and fucking lean into life.
That's what's exciting, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's helped you, or at what point in your life did all of these things start to become more apparent to you?
Every day. Every day. Like, it's really,
have you always been Scotty that I see sitting across from me right now?
The version of me is different to the version of me last week, bro. To a month ago, to a year ago. We're constantly changing, growing, evolving, and yes, some parts of us may remain similar, but we're like, even on a physiological level, biological level, our cells are turning over every 7 years. So those parts of us are renewing and refreshing and bringing newness into our being. It's a great question. Like, it's interesting because I'm always me.
Sure.
Like, we're in here, right? And it's like, I've generally been a pretty charismatic, outgoing, confident human most of the time, right? Externally. And beyond that, there's been, I enjoy people. I enjoy connecting. I also spend a fuckload of time by myself, bro. I spend a lot of time by myself when I'm not doing my breathwork journeys with my clients or on coaching calls, or like the last 3 weeks, I've been in 3 different cities, workshops, events, seminars. I just love spending time by myself. So the more time I've been able to spend time by myself has allowed me to understand who I am. And I love who I am. I love all the parts of me. And there's a lot of unconscious things that are still tickling that I'm like, oh, fuck off. I can deal with you later. Right? They're all there. And I have just been very committed to learning, committed to growing, committed to doing the best with what I have and what I know, to create change in the world, to create change in my life, to support the people around me so they can live the life that they want to live. And I'm here I've got a big mission, I've got a big vision with the work that I do to support the elevation of humanity's collective consciousness, to better protect the environment, to better just support this whole earth community through what I have to share. And the more that I've done this deep inner work on myself and peeled back the layers and gone through the grief, the sadness, the relationships, the loss, tolerating things that I'm like, Jesus Christ, why did I do that? And the full spectrum of human emotion, allows me to have more compassion for myself and others. I can see people deeper with where they're at. And that's one of the gifts in facilitating and coaching, is we can then facilitate people to the level that we've gone. And because I'm so committed to showing up for my clients and serving and adding value and catalyzing change in our world and in our communities and with our culture, that desire to continue to heal, grow, lean in and explore is a huge motivator for me, bro. And I've had that there for a long time in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably a great piece for all the dads who are listening to this, right? All people, right? But especially people who are in that leadership position as a parent, you know, being willing to do battle with some of those parts of yourself that you know need addressing, that are trying to break out. You know, the stuff that we've spoken about so far.
Something's come up in my body that I want to address.
Yeah, like if you're especially for a man who's a father, you know, if you want to be because you said that we can't facilitate anyone to a level higher than ourselves, because we don't know how to
generally
do it, right?
Yeah, like
We have to experience it ourselves.
I think as a simple concept, like people can understand it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. So, you know, if you want your child to be happy, successful, confident, all those things, then it's up to you to become an example of that and to work on some of those perhaps inner demons that you might be walking around with that are holding you back in your own life. Because once you've done it yourself, it's not just about not passing that on, because that your kid could internalize that from a whole bunch of different places in their life, right? But now you have had the experience of getting through it.
Yeah.
You know the correct, you know how your child is actually feeling in that moment. You know the fear they're experiencing. You know the anxiety. You know that perhaps lack of self-worth in that situation. And you know exactly how you've been able to work through that yourself. So you can actually offer some real insight. And you can, the best thing you can do if you're ever coaching someone, if you're able to explain to that person how they're feeling better than they can explain it themselves, they go, "That's me. Oh my God, what? How do I fix it?" They want to know, because like, how does this guy know what I'm going through better than even I do?
Yeah.
You know, it's only because you've had the experience before and you've done the work to get through it. And people really listen to what you have to offer when you can do that, because they really, in their hearts, feel this person might genuinely have an answer for me that I haven't been able to find anywhere else, you know?
And landing, landing this piece. It's two threads I want to speak to. One, I've been working, like I'm starting to work now more with other coaches, breathwork facilitators, to support them on building up their business, to support them to do the deep interpersonal work so they maintain personal alignment and they can continue to serve to a higher level. And because I know if I facilitate and work with one person, then I'm facilitating for their whole network. That's being passed on. The tips, the tools, the strategies, the elevated awareness, the consciousness is going. And bringing that back to a family perspective is doing this work can shift the baseline for your bloodline. It's fucking so important. Because when we're dealing with lots of generational things, and I've seen it in my family, my great-grandmother has treated my grandmother like this, who's passed that energy on to my mother, who's tried to pass it down onto me, and then I've felt all those fuck things from decades of patterns. I'm like, no, fuck that. I want to change that. I want to shift that cycle, that pattern. It takes being willing, it takes being aware, and actually starting to understand what influences these patterns and processes. So I want to speak to that. Another thing is, when you were talking about fathers, this is the embodiment piece, guys, right? Okay, so Mitch is talking about fathers. All of a sudden, I feel the energy in my gut, and it goes, and I notice the thoughts, and I see a vision of my father that comes through, and I notice a physiological response, and I go, there's energy here around this thread. There's something present for me. And what I wanted to speak to is some of the relationship dynamics with my parents and my father, which I think will just offer a valuable perspective to people. And this is my truth. This is an experience that I've gone through that has been life-changing. So my mum and dad separated when I was about 6 years of age. Dad moved to Melbourne. I stayed with my mother for 11 years or so, just with her until she remarried, and that was my stepdad. We had a pretty interesting family dynamic where there was someone in our life who was almost like a grandfather figure for me, not biologically related, but he was part of the family with mum and I, right? Mum remarried, and I had a pretty good relationship with mum, my stepdad, and family for a majority of my life. But about 7 years ago, we started to experience this shift in dynamics where I had a new partner, and like we ended up doing some traveling. And when we left the country, things started to get fucking weird. Like, they weren't responding to my calls, they weren't responding to messages, and they came and said, like, you know, we're so surprised that you don't know what's going on. You've caused so much disruption in the family. You've been disrespectful. You've been da-da-da-da, like this big list of claims. And I'm like, fuck do you mean? Like, talk to me. Let me know what's going on. And it was this big process of trying to open up and communicate, to figure out what's going on, to hear their perspective, to integrate, to learn, to be the best son, to be my own man, to just figure out what's going on. And the whole family, short story, like over the years, they've just withdrawn from me completely. I've been messaging, I've been leaning in, I've shared my truth, I've spoken my heart out in a whole deep way, and there's no response. After 5-6 years now, I still haven't spoken to my mother in 5-6 years, bro. My stepdad, I haven't heard from them. My grandparents, sort of de facto grandparents in Queens, I haven't heard anything from them. And I've leaned in, I've been willing to open up and to share, and I've called for birthdays, Mother's Day, for all these things. And at the time when this started happening, I noticed my family was pulling away, and they were being very cryptic and just like very blamey, like, how fucking dare you, you've done all this. I'm thinking, guys, let me know, communicate with me. That's not how they taught me. They taught me to be open, to be honest, to be willing to have conversations. And it just was a very interesting shift. And I won't go too deep into the dynamics, but I think there's been some manipulation and influence and other things happening in the family. But when I realized that my mum and family was handling the situation, they're pulling back, I was like, this is not how I want to do things. Then I realized, for the last 5 years, I have rejected my father, and I hadn't spoken to him for 5 years because I'd followed the advice of my mum and my stepdad that said, hey, your dad's, you're feeling really hurt by what's gone down, and just take some time away from him. So a year, 6 months turned into a year, turned into 2 years, turned into 4 years, bro, turned into 5 fucking years of disconnection from my biological father, who was leaning in, who was messaging me, who wanted to resolve things, who wanted to fix things. And I almost felt proud when I'd tell my mum and my stepdad, look, Alan messaged, and yeah, I didn't respond. Like, proud about that, but deep down it wasn't fully aligned, but I didn't know at the time. So when my mum and stepdad started doing all this, I realized, oh shit, I can't expect them to approach a conversation with me and to approach this healing and reconnection and to be open to me if I'm treating my father in the exact fucking opposite way. I can't be in integrity. I can't expect them to treat me like this if I'm treating someone else like that. And this is how this world of mirrors and projections and reflections work. It's like, I want this, but in order to really be in integrity with that, I've got to sort my shit out here. So I needed to lean into a conversation with my father, to open up again, to be vulnerable, to allow him into my heart, to allow him into my space, and to acknowledge that, hey, he's been there the whole fucking time, messaging, checking in, hey buddy, I miss you, really want to talk to you, hey buddy, I miss you, what's going on? And I didn't respond for 5 years. So when I came back from Africa at that time, I organized to see my dad, and he flew up from Melbourne and picked him up from the airport. This was the first time that we'd seen each other in 5 years, bro. And he flew up, and I took him to, I think, one of the park benches in Burleigh or somewhere in my hood, and we sat down at this park bench, had some lunch or something, and we just fucking put it all out on the table, bro. No masks, no filters, cried it out, hugged it out, just expressed all the things that we were fucked off at each other for, owned our shit, and fully met each other in a real open state, because both of us were willing to lean in. Both of us had learned our lessons. Both of us had reflected on how we could have showed up differently in our relationship. And I stopped fucking blaming him for everything that I was feeling, and decided to own that fully and to be honest and open with him. So that was life-changing, because all of a sudden I'm back in relationship with my father and things are fucking great, bro. We're good. We're connected. We're open. We can talk about anything and everything. And I know the things that will trigger him and challenge him. And I love talking about them, but there's respect and we love each other and we care about each other. But now we've got a really beautiful relationship that is a great friendship, human to human, a great father-son relationship where we care about each other, we value each other, and he can be the father and I can be the son, and I can also fucking continue to educate him and inspire him and help him see things from different perspectives, because it's a two-way street, right? So that was such a pivotal shift in my health and well-being, bro, in my relationships, to be able to bring in more love into my life instead of reject it. So that's an example of coming into greater integrity, of being willing to lean in, because at the end of the day, we all want to feel loved. We all want to be seen, respected, understood, and we all get to forgive ourselves and other people for what has or hasn't happened if you choose. But I encourage people to, and to be able to move on and bring more love into our lives.
Awesome. That's really special, man. It makes me feel good that you had that experience with your dad too. And I think that there's probably a lot of blokes out there watching this who would love to have an honest, properly, fully unhinged, honest conversation with their dad, just to gain that little bit of perspective around perhaps some things that happened in the past. And honestly, lads, do it. But before you can do that, take on this journey yourself. You know, you almost have to be your dad's dad in some.
Oh, we're constantly parenting our parents and ourselves and others. Yeah. Never ending.
You know what I mean? But you can only do that if you personally, like you said, you want this, but in order to have that, you've got to deal with the situation over here. And oftentimes that situation is something within yourself, you know? That's really special, mate. I'm super, super happy for you. I'm going to wrap it up there because there's already like 10 million things that someone could take from this, but we should definitely do a part 2, mate, because I feel like there's so much more that you could share with the guys that are going to be listening to this, and there's so much more that I could get from a conversation with yourself, man. So listen out for part 2, guys. But before we sign off, you know, I really do think that the work that you do is super, super valuable. So for anyone who is curious and would like to lean in, as you say, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they see some of the events that you're running and just get the information they need to perhaps take that first step?
Beautiful, bro. Thank you for that. And just, I want to speak to one thing and then move into that. Around communication is when we have those situations where we're leaning in and it can feel confronting or uneasy or challenging, lean into that, speak your truth, but to know that how someone responds is not in your control, but to still work with that, because at the end of the day, you don't control what someone says or does, and their response is going to give you insight into where they're at. So if you got to be vulnerable and open up to someone, your missus, partner, your dad, your son, or whatever, and they don't meet you with openness, with acceptance, with love, with respect or whatever, and they project or they're trying to bring you down or ridicule you, that's got nothing to do with you. That's their shit. That's them being unintegrated or unwilling to meet you in that. So to know that it's one piece to be in your power and speak your truth, but also to understand how someone's response, how you can learn from that, and how you can meet them in compassion, you know? So I'm Gold Coast based, so I have a practice here on the Gold Coast, and I do a lot of face-to-face work with people for breathwork ceremonies and breathwork journeys. The face-to-face work for me extends with group breathwork journeys and ceremonies. I do seminars, workshops. I've got some immersions and retreats planned for the second half of the year. And these are going to be really great opportunities for people to connect with other people and to work with me. The majority of my work is through my one-on-one coaching program. So I deep dive with people. I support people to do this deep inner work with the accountability, the support, the mentorship, the coaching, to really heal and transform their lives from the inside out. And this lights me up because I get to see people creating change in their lives and in the world. And that has a combination of different modalities and techniques, support, resources in it. And all that's delivered both face-to-face or online. So I've also got a group container coming up next month, which is going to be online. So there's so many different ways that people can work with me. And the best thing for us to do is just to have a conversation, to jump on either Instagram. So if they search at Earth Centered or Scott Wallace, and also on Facebook as well, Scott Wallace or at Earth Centered, and flick me a DM. Let's get in touch and see what's most aligned in terms of, where people are at, and if there's alignment between what I have to offer and their problems and challenges and where they're wanting to get to. Really, in this world of limitless potential, bro, anything is possible. I've got a client flying in tomorrow from Sydney that I'm going to be working with. We're doing an amazing immersion. I'm going to be heading up to the sunny coast for an event soon and work with people. So there's no cap on this, bro. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to connect today and to share on this platform and to hopefully plant some seeds for people to expand their awareness, to challenge them, to help them see things from another lens, to empower people, to activate people, and to know that, to trust that everything is going to land for you in a way that's best suited for them where they're at. And we don't need to understand everything. We don't need to have everything in place, but just to allow things to sink in and to start watching your awareness change, to start noticing what shifts in your reality. And let's bring more love into the world. Let's bring more passion into the world, bro, and create some change.
Nice. Fantastic. Guys, I'll make sure that all the links for Scott's social media end up down below in the comments section. And by all means, hit Scott up and take that first step, boys.
Lean in.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Big love, brother.
Appreciate
Thank you for today, man. Yeah. Listen to your heart, speak your truth, bro. Let's do this.
Hey, mate, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you did, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could leave us a 5-star review, because that's going to help us get our message in front of more men who need to hear it. Now, if you have some feedback for me, I'd love to hear that too. Comment down below. And if you just need some mini doses of Unbreakable Man motivation throughout your week, then you can follow us across all social platforms. On Facebook, it's Unbreakable Man Challenge. On Instagram, it's Unbreakable Man_challenge. And on TikTok and YouTube, it's just Unbreakable Man. Your support would be absolutely invaluable. Now, last but not least, do not forget, men aren't born, they're built.